What does active studying actually look like? How do you study actively? I get a lot of students asking me these questions, and in this video, we're going to go over some demonstrations of how actually to study actively using the best study methods for you to understand and do well on your tests. Now in this video, I'm going to be doing some demonstrations of active studying with an example from about college level biology, but you can take these study strategies and apply them across the board to any scientific subject or really any discipline at all. First of all, what is not active studying? You may think that if you're doing something or you're actively moving, you're actively studying or using good study strategies, when in reality, things like highlighting a textbook or copying down your notes again, or just watching a video are all passive forms of studying, and they may not help you as much when it comes time for the test. Research-backed active studying strategies involve things like active recall or retrieval practice spaced out over periods of time. So it is better to do these in small chunks over several days, but if you only have a little bit of time left to cram for an exam or a particular class, then you can also employ active studying strategies on the day before your test as well. Active studying involves putting away your notes or materials and thinking of the topics or asking yourself questions about those topics and trying to see what you can come up with on your own and testing your own understanding of that idea. If you cannot answer those questions or come up with those ideas, then you know that that's something that you need to review more. If you come up with things but you're not getting the answers correct on your practice questions, then you also know that that is something you need to go back and review. Then, like practicing an instrument, you're going to go back and do it again until you really have a good understanding of these topics. But wait, what if you feel like you don't know the content at all? What if you're starting to study and you feel like you didn't understand something in class, or you missed a few days, or your teacher didn't teach it to you? You can still use these active studying strategies as a starting point to diagnose what you do know and then go back and review the things that you really need to focus on. By starting with some of these strategies, you'll be setting yourself up for success instead of wasting time passively reviewing things that you might already understand. Let's go over some strategies of what this actually looks like. My first favorite active studying strategy is a brain dump. So what you're going to do is get out a blank piece of paper, something to write with, and of course your coffee if you want it. Caffeine can offer a little bit of a studying boost. And you're going to go over a topic for your class and try to write down everything you can remember about that topic on your piece of paper without looking at your notes. I would set a timer for maybe 5 minutes or so and just write down everything you can remember, giving yourself pauses to think and reflect on what you do know. If you draw a blank, that's okay. Just think about what you do know and try to focus on those topics or related ideas. Once you're done or your timer goes off, then you want to compare what you've written to your notes or some other course materials and see if there's anything you missed or anything you misremembered. Highlight those items and remember to go back and review them later, and then do another brain dump a little bit later on. My next favorite and classic active studying strategy is flashcards. This is where you have a term or idea on one side of a card or digital slide, and then on the other slide or the next page, you're going to have a topic, that thing explained, or the definition. Here again, we see flashcards for the Krebs cycle, and you can go over these as many times as you want, ideally in short, small chunks, and maybe sort out the ones that you missed into a smaller pile, going back to those later on. This is great when you're using physical cards, but you can also do this using digital flashcards and just Googling whatever Quizlet pertains to the topic that you're trying to study. This is great for on-the-go studying. You can take these with you or review flashcards on your phone. You can also easily make your own flashcards on Google Slides or any other flashcard making app online. Next up, the next really good active studying strategy, and you've heard me say it before, is practice questions. So make sure you're looking at practice questions equivalent to the level that you will be tested on in class, not just memorization and basic recall information, but understanding level questions as well. You can find practice questions sometimes in your textbook or in teacher-provided materials. There's also plenty of resources online, especially if you are practicing for a larger standardized test like an AP exam or the MCAT. Make sure when you answer questions correctly, give yourself a little pat on the back, but for ones that you answer incorrectly, be sure to go back and review those topics and try more practice questions on them at a later time. It may feel uncomfortable, but identifying gaps in your knowledge is really going to be helpful in understanding that topic for the exam or test. It may feel better to your brain to go over things that you already know and answer practice questions on topics that you like or topics that you find easy, but that is not going to help you improve your learning or fill those gaps in your knowledge. Another active studying strategy that I I really like is using mnemonics to recall information. You can either make up mnemonics on your own, or you can Google or go on YouTube to find mnemonics on topics that you are trying to study. For example, with the Krebs cycle, just go onto YouTube and there are plenty of people out there who have already created great mnemonics to help you remember all of the steps and intermediates within the Krebs cycle for you to study. Once you've reviewed that mnemonic a couple times, close your computer, close your notes, and try to remember it out loud or say it out loud and try to remember all the steps that you need to do. This is similar to a brain dump, and you can write it down on paper if that helps. If there's any parts of the mnemonic that you're not remembering, go back and do those again. My last favorite active studying strategy is explaining a topic to a friend without the use of your notes. You can do this over the phone, in person, over Zoom, but if you're studying with a group of people, this is a great way to make sure that you have a good enough understanding of a topic. A lot of students say, well, I understand it, but I can't really explain it. That means you don't understand it well enough to articulate it on an exam or a test, especially if there is a written response that you have to answer. If you're working with quantitative problems or math problems, still explaining how you would go about figuring out that problem and talking out your work out loud is a really good way to make sure that you've solidified that information in your head. Some students say that when they're using this study strategy, they end up confusing themselves even more, but go ahead and try it once and have your friend be looking at the notes as you go through. As you're talking, make sure they're writing down anything that you might have explained a little vaguely or things that you said incorrectly, and then talk about those after you're done with your explanation. Then, if your friend is studying for the same class, they can go back and re-explain that information to you and seeing if they can fill those knowledge gaps for you. These are just some of my favorite active studying strategies, but I hope that seeing them on video has made it a little bit easier to come up with ideas for how you are going to actively study for your classes. What active studying strategies do you like to use and have been helpful for you? Give this video a like if it's been helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you later.